Hello, my name is Host Eric, and I'm the host talking to famous people, and I'm here with a famous person, Trenton Shirks, and we were chatting on Facebook, and I told Trenton that he had Restless Metaphysical Leg Syndrome. So, if you're familiar with this advertisement that was on TV for a while, I guess probably they pulled the drug from the market or something, or maybe they just don't advertise it anymore. It was for Restless Leg Syndrome, and I always thought that was a funny disease to have. But I think ENTPs are born with metaphysical restless leg syndrome. And my position is we don't really ever know what it means to be satisfied or content just being, that we know satisfaction and contentment through doing. And in that regard, we're the opposite of the ISFP. Now, Trent, you said you'd had some sort of question, but regardless of that, I'm curious about talking about your own experiences with so-called existential terror, but I'd be happy to answer any question or talk about any question you have first, if you want to.
No, well, existential terror. It seems like I live in a constant state of optimism, that I'm completely averse to any negative future outcome. So if there's in my most content place, if there's a 1 in 1,000 chance something will go right, I'm gonna fucking think it's gonna go right. I can't. That's usually the state of mind I'm in. But when I am more withdrawn, whether it be because of something to do with my function, the inferior function, whether or not it's that, it feels like the literal opposite of that.
I'm curious to have you explain a little bit more about what you mean here. So I know that we both operate in this optimistic space, and the reason for that, I think I've got the reason for it pretty well figured out, which is simply that we don't require of ourselves any clear understanding of how we're going to get from point A to point B, to have complete faith in our ability to get from point A to point B, and in our vision for why we need to go to point B. And other people want us to justify those optimisms, and we can't really explain it, because that's part of what extroverted intuition does, is we can see some sort of general, this is going to play out in this way kind of a thing, but we don't really know exactly why or how. But we're probably right.
Right. And it's when I want to accomplish a goal, I don't really have, when I see other people trying to work towards a goal, they have these certain things they want to accomplish in said goal. When I want to accomplish something, I only see the goal. I don't really have any structure or definition for the steps needed to reach the goal. So where a person would have, in some kind of, when a person would normally have some, satisfaction from completing each one of the steps in said goal, I have no steps. So it's just trying to reach the goal without having any kind of doing it without. I'm never for sure how far along in the goal I am or anything like that, because I am not. None of the conventional things that would be applicable to accomplishing the goal is applicable to me at all. It's like I've completely took the goal and removed anything besides the goal itself, and so that's the only thing I see, and it makes it very difficult to reach any point of contentness.
Well, there's a reason for that too, and I think that to the extent that we understand why we are the way we are, and that it's neither desirable nor possible to be the other kind of person, it helps to note that there are two styles of work. There's the executive style of work, and there's the constructive style of work. So people who work constructively, they want to start, get their hands into it, mush it around, adjust, look. They want to figure it out as it goes because they operate on the basic assumption that the circumstances of the moment are best able to dictate what we ought to do going forward rather than something that happened further away in time into the past. But an executive worker feels as though they need to know where they're going ahead of time, but not just where they're going, but how they're going to get there. So an executive worker wants to execute protocols or plans, and in general wants to have a clear understanding of the limits of they want to have clearly limited goals so that the metric for understanding whether they've achieved them is easily determined. Whereas I don't think we like to have clearly defined goals. I think we like to have vague goals, and then we frame things so that they work in service of those goals. The problem is that we're taught early on that that's bad. That the way we are represents either a lack of discipline, a lack of character,
apathy in general.
Apathy or laziness or stubbornness or any number of other things that people don't like, but that's not what it is. And that's why I really enjoy the cognitive function model so much, and I think it's so useful, is because it allows us to understand that much of the conflicts which humans have with one another stem from the fact that we assume our cognitive function stack values ought to be universalized. That to the extent that somebody else isn't smart and parsing and requiring their thinking to be consistent when they're making advocacies, that there's something wrong with them. They need to, like that's our bias, right? And when somebody's justifying positions with feelings, that there's basically something wrong with them, that there's something immoral about that they're advocating others ought to do this, or that this be imposed upon others because of how they subjectively feel or how they individually feel. To us, that's appalling. But I think that's what all the conflicts boil down to, is they would have their own version of appalling. And one of the reasons why I like cognitive function model is because I think that it really supports and complements the negative rights framework, because it explains why, given the fact that we naturally come into the world with these competing values, we have to respect one another's autonomy and and to fulfill our duty to not interfere with others.
Yeah, you mentioned something a while back, and it's regarding the apathy, and it's that which type. You said something about how each type reacts to failure. I think that's what it was, and I almost feel like in a situation I don't feel like I could ever even experience that, because if I rarely have I set a very strict goal for myself that's even possible to fail, and if I do fail that goal, I will have understood the reasoning for me failing that goal so much that I could not just accept failure on its own terms and experience that. It's just that I would continue fleshing out like, well, I failed because of this, this, and this, and this, and those are deterministic factors, so I had no free will over it, so it wasn't my fault. It doesn't matter. I didn't actually fail. And it creates a sense of that. Usually I never feel like I've failed something. And I think that's an important part in growing as a person and learning from things. Saying, I fucked that up, and I'm going to be able to learn from this and not do that again. But where we flesh things out so much and get it down to its most pure logical principles, it's difficult for us to actually learn from our failures. It's almost impossible.
Well, I think the thing is this. You'll find that you unavoidably do learn from your failures, whether you do so consciously or not. You
I'm experiencing it right now.
You unavoidably adjust. But the thing to remember is the reason we're optimistic is because when we fail, that's yesterday's game, and we're thinking about the future, and we understand there's always another chance at the plate. I will tell you this: there is a goodness, a deep goodness to having goals that are extremely difficult to meet, even if you do everything right. Like, I've been trying to win a national championship in debate as a direct head coach of debaters for something like 8 or 9 years now. And, you know, even when I do everything right, it's really hard. I've gotten semifinals as far as I've gotten. I've gotten semifinals twice. Gone quarterfinals a bunch of times. You know, we've made it in the top 4, and I've never won the thing. So that's frustrating. I have had, as a debate director, the coaches who were working under me, who were the policy coach and the PF coach underneath me, who I hired, and I was technically the head coach, but I wasn't directly coaching those kids and dealing with case strategy. So in my mind, they're not really my national champions. I do have a state champion, but the thing is, I still haven't met that goal. I still haven't met it. And it's 8 or 9 years in the making, and I keep getting close. It's frustrating. But it shows you something like that does a lot of good stuff for us, because it allows us to stretch out our time frame. And that's our biggest problem, is we are not patient people at all. And whatever the thing is, if it's a distant goal, it requires a lot of short-term maintenance type work and like maintaining the same thing over and over and over again for a long time. Impossible for it to happen as a directed goal. Talking with famous people is that thing that I just described, something that you have to do over and over again or whatever. But if I would never have been able to plan it like that.
Right. I think one of the main, like a principle that is almost applicable to all ENTPs is it's difficult for us to feel accomplishment from doing the same thing twice, accomplishing it twice.
That's true. I mean, we don't like to repeat ourselves, and we do feel the need to prove ourselves all the time. And I was thinking that earlier today, like last night at band practice, Corey did this thing where basically he indicated that while we were taking a break, if I was playing the drums, I don't remember exactly what happened. Basically, we were practicing something without Nick because Nick was taking a break, and he basically said, "No, you're not good enough drummer for me to. You're gonna be a hassle to play with because you're not a good enough drummer." And I mean, of course, I get his point in the sense that I know I'm not anywhere close to as good a drummer as Nick, but I also understand that it represents an attachment to old data on his part. I've been practicing a lot, and I'm actually quite a good drummer if I'm not asked to match the drums to this song. When that happens, often I'll have to that will require me to play a drum beat that's too fast for me to play. But in other contexts, if I start with the drums, I can be quite an effective drummer. And so I've been sort of about that all day. Like, I need to find some way to prove to him that I'm a good drummer now. But I don't need to prove that. I don't need to prove that to him. I'm not that good of a drummer, and I should feel no need whatsoever to prove that to anybody. I don't know why I'm like that, but I certainly understand, T-shirts. Hello, Host Zachary.
Greetings. It's
I think as much as how averse I am to dealing with emotional tension, period, it seems as if I am very good at, or I imagine myself to be very good at feeling and understand how others. So you said one day that I was like,
how others do what? You cut out for a second. You feeling and understanding how others
mean something, I guess.
How others mean something. You mean their intentions?
So more humility or something like that than other ENTPs or something like that. Most ENTPs, and I think that stems from I understand, and I'm completely fine being around people as long as I know there is no sense of superiority on their part. They feel they have over me. I could sit here and you could tell me, I could say a million wrong things, and you could correct me just as blatantly as you wanted to, and I would feel nothing because I know there is no superiority on your end. There's no
We're egalitarian. ENTPs are the most egalitarian type. I treat everybody the same, and I treat everybody as an equal citizen. And it doesn't matter how old you are, too. I'll treat kids the same way, too. I treat them like I treat adults in the sense that I don't talk down to them and shit. Because I have a theory about this, too. It's because of our third slot FE. We don't know. We're not very good at it. We don't master the hierarchy stuff. The little subtle, oh, well, that person's slightly more important than that person, and so you behave slightly differently. Those kind of FE details escape us. And
the one thing,
we don't.
I gotta interject this one thing. I'm sorry. The worst thing is when we become conscious of that system, of another person being quote unquote above us in some way. When I become conscious of that, when I feel as if somebody is over me, telling me something because they feel as if they are quote unquote more powerful or important than me, it makes me more passionate than anything in the whole fucking world.
It makes you pow pow. There's a word for that. It makes you pow pow.
Pow pow.
Yeah, Zachary, could you ask him about his existential terror and motivational stuff, since I seem to keep wandering off topic here? I'm curious about it. We started talking about it, and then I got off topic. Why don't you take over the interviewing for a second while I attend to some lung-related issues?
Right there. Wait. That's what I want to make an ENTP video about. And my ENTP hate video, that's what I'm going to do. Putting my fucking ENE on the spot.
Oh,
that's what
I'm just asking you to ask him questions. Can you explain your motivational issues that you were telling Strauss? Can you talk about what you mean by existential terror? It's not like NE, dude. You got plenty of TI to handle this without any fucking creative thinking at all.
Update me, Trenton. What were you talking about there?
Well, I was talking to him about, I was experiencing some existential terror, and it isn't really that. It's more, when I experience anything like that, it's the understanding of the cognitive functions who has assisted me in kind of avoiding any kind of existential terror to this point. And it's been pretty helpful in that way, but I'm in the same, where I would usually, almost as a default, I would resort to existential terror to validate my feelings of melancholy. Now I feel like I'm having more difficulties validating, I guess, the turmoil internally with that, and I'm just experiencing just basically guilt. But anyways, I was going to talk about existential terror, but what he's asking, and the way I can explain it, is that ENTPs and INTPs, it's when how I've come to understand the world and everything, TI. And the problem with intuition and TI being in the dominant and auxiliary positions is that you want to understand everything, according to your own principles and things. And you get to the point, and you just want to keep boiling it down, until you get to the point where you realize and you understand the deterministic qualities of things and people. And you kind of associate that with your understanding of your emotional connection with other people and other people in general, and you start to see the deterministic qualities people have, and it makes relationships with people, it makes you want to experience those and enjoy a connection with somebody. But the closer you get to it, the more you identify, again, the deterministic qualities and how little you are actually connecting with another individual and not just a set of qualities and just variables. Because I just keep wanting to boil it down, and I can never just experience, I guess, a sense of content. So when I'm forced to leave NE and go into TI, and I'm experiencing TI using all the information I just got from NE, it's almost innate for me to experience existential terror, because I start understanding that there's no my free will.
Trenton, you know what
Yes.
you just said, basically, what I heard? I heard you say,
What?
given that I have no feelings, and I'm looking for an understanding of why I would have a relationship with somebody, and since
Yeah.
there's no feelings there, obviously, because those aren't tangible in a way that I can understand, I've determined...
That's not what I have feelings, but it's
Okay,
difficult
yeah,
for them to
but-
manifest.
But Trenton, when you talked about everything, your relationships being deterministic and stuff like that, that's the missing piece. Is that it's not deterministic because you feel differently about some people than others. And it takes us a while to understand that that matters a little bit. In fact, it kind of matters a lot. And when you get comfortable with at least accepting that, like, oh, that's that stuff over there? That, Jesus Christ, what a mess. It makes me sympathetic to people who have TI in the 8th slot or 7th slot or 4th slot. I mean, it makes me sympathetic. I understand now. Like, oh, when I'm like, before when I was younger and I didn't really think about this stuff, and I'd be yelling at some kid like, how can you possibly not understand? I just fucking said it, you know? And you realize, well, it's Eric. You're trapping them there in this room and compelling them to perform on a 7th function. It's cruel. Well, what if I had to go to Feely school all day?
It'd be impossible.
And my job was to sit there and experience emotions. I mean, that's what happened with my ex-wife, right? I kept trying to get some finality from her. What's going on here, Candace? Are we together? Are we experiencing fighting for each other? Or are we separate? She wanted to keep me in this, let's see how we feel. Let's live in our emotions for a while and really experience it. And it was
I found my best relationship.
It was torture.
I've experienced my most content points in relationships when there's absolutely no labels, and it's just like a state of what's the word I'm looking, limbo. Like when I don't have to worry about tending to anything that would come with any technicalities, any structure, and I can just be and experience my life with an individual without any rules or structure.
You don't get that because you want to be able to put expectations upon them. See, that's the other side of the equation. Is while we don't want a lot of expectations about what to do, ENTPs in general do want monogamy and do want a committed relationship. I think I do, certainly. And so there's compromises that have to be made because you're either going to get with another ENTP, in which case there's no connection that's going to be made that's going to allow you to be together for a long time because you're too similar, and there's no complementary stuff going on. It's all not conflicting, but potentially competing, and at best cooperative parallel. So that's why ENTPs, even though they share exactly the same values, can't possibly be with each other in a relationship.
Here's something interesting. It's not that vulgar, and I'll be very whatever. Okay, it's like throughout the entirety of high school, right? It's like I'm gonna start talking to this girl, right? And fucking hopefully I can be with her or sleep with her or something. And when I get to the point when I know it's possible, I absolutely lose interest. And that's a common thing with ENTPs, right? And I've been putting that off so long. And I was pretty much with one girl throughout high school, intimately or physically. And then, you know what, I was like, I'm actually going to stop putting this shit off, and I'm actually going to try to sleep with another girl. And I did. And it was the most terrible experience I've ever had in my entire fucking life. There was nothing objective to warrant how uncomfortable I was. It was just I was not emotionally connected to this individual, and that's what it boiled down to. In my head, it was perfectly viable that I'd be capable of...
It's fucking classic ENTP, just horrible mistake, which is based on the fact that we don't think that we have feelings to consider in these equations.
Yeah.
And then we discover, that I didn't like, but everybody keeps saying I'm supposed to want to do that. I'm supposed to go want to be a predator or something. I'm supposed to go want to go conquer. But we don't. And not only is it okay, it's preferable by a large margin. It makes us what we object to fundamentally is this notion of, well, first of all, we don't get our, that's not where we get our rewards from. That's SE rewards. You know, like,
I was arguing with an ENTP the other day, and he's the most arrogant fuck.
Yeah.
I was arguing with him, and I was like, you have, because I was just like, I do not have this trophy complex like you do with women. I do not need this validation from conquering other individuals like that. I've never felt that way.
Well, the bottom line is we get our rewards from FE. That means other people's feelings, which makes it difficult for us to be a player because we're not good at other people's feelings in the way that Dom is. And we get our reward from it. We don't really successfully manage everybody through other people's feelings. We use that eventually to stop making so many mistakes. That's what we eventually use FP to do, is we stop making so many mistakes. But at the end of the day, we want to see other people happy. And I don't think going out and sleeping with a bunch of chicks is motivated by trying to make anybody happy. I think it's motivated by trying to make yourself feel sensory pleasure. And that's not where we roll, ultimately. We like that a lot in the context of a relationship because it works on multiple levels. It attends to our weaker functions, right? We don't want to go out and compete at all in that domain because those are our weaknesses. SE, FE, those are weak spots for us. They're not really that strong. FI is the weakest of all. So that's why we need somebody we can trust. We need to be very cautious and trust somebody. And once we have somebody who's trust, do INTPs? Yeah, INTPs do have a problem being faithful. I've heard that before as well. I believe it to be the case. But I don't think they have a problem with cheating necessarily. There's a difference. It's like they may cheat a couple times early on, and then they may simply refuse to get into a committed relationship.
Is it accurate to consider myself faithful?
I don't know. Are you? I'm assuming you are. I don't think you're. I think you.
Wait. Oh no, I thought Faith was still in here. She left. God damn it.
I would assume you are because I think that you have too much. You're thinking too actively about ethics to cheat, but I also think that that when we switch modes, we stop thinking. We are not mindful people. NTVs are not mindful. It's possible to get lost in a moment, you know. Anyway, let's end this video and start another one since we got a bunch of people arrived. Trenton, thank you for an engaging conversation about the disability called ENTP, and it really is. Being one, I can assure you, I know how fucking hard it is, especially when you're younger and you're still trying to figure all this shit out, and you haven't exactly been exposed to all the ideas that you are going to need to put the whole thing together in your own head. Because that's what you'll end up doing, is having a master grand unified theory that you operate under, a framework that makes some sort of sense to you, you know, yada, yada, yada. Thanks for watching.
I have one question.
Yeah.
One question to sum up the video.
Okay.
You being an older ENTP, do you think it is even possible to reach that point of contentness?
Fuck yeah.
ENTPs in general, do you think it's possible to reach that point?
INTPs, yes. No problem. I mean, not no problem, but very possible.
Contentness
ENTPs, I don't know.
Wait, what contentness again? With a relationship?
No, in general.
Satisfaction, contentment. A sense that you are very happy with being rather than doing.
That's good. That's a good way to word it.
My personal take on that is
You're super quiet, Zach.
Oh really?
Yeah.
I'm not sure how to fix it. What about now?
You're still not that loud. Can you just get up right up on the mic, please?
What about here?
That's better.
Okay. My personal belief is that there's no way to achieve that contentment unless you start adopting a perspective on a greater sense of community. That's my personal belief.
Community may engender contentment. I like that answer. Let's stop this video now, and thank you all for watching and or participating in Talking with Tennis People.